All right, guys, we're gonna get started on this warm-up. So we got a warm-up written out here. We'll go 2 rounds through. I'll show you guys all these movements in a second. Here we got 5 left and right side single arm dumbbell deadlifts. We're gonna run 100 meters, 5 left and right side single arm hang power cleans, 200 meter row, 10 alternating dumbbell snatches, and a 200 meter bike. If we don't have a rower and a bike available, we'll just do that 100 meter run all 3 times. So for this deadlift, you have your dumbbell just on one side. We want to make sure we're keeping this core nice and tight. Stand to full lockout, and then touching the ground every time. We'll get your 5, and then switch 5 on the other side. Then for this clean, you can either hang clean from the middle or from just outside the hip here. I prefer the middle. We'll just pull up right to the shoulder here. 5 nice and easy on each side. And then for that dumbbell snatch, just your standard dumbbell snatch. Dumbbell starting on the floor. We're gonna alternate sides. Each rep, we'll get 10 total, so you get 5 on each side. So I'm gonna have Cameron, come on up. We'll start warming you up. Give me 5 deadlifts. So we only need 1. So we're making sure we're focusing on keeping this core tight and this back nice and flat for all 5 reps. Switch right to the other side. This should be with a pretty light weight if you got that available. And we'll go to that run. Just go ahead and do 50. So just a nice easy warm-up run, especially on this first round of the warm-up. We want to make sure we're just kind of getting the blood flowing, getting everything moving. And that second round through, if we're feeling all right, we can go ahead and pick up that pace a little bit. Good. All right, so we'll head back to this dumbbell. We got hang power cleans this time. So remember, we can go inside, kind of like a kettlebell swing. Switch to the other side. Or we can go outside if you want to show us a few of the outside. Good, and we'll hop on that rower for a quick 200 meter row. Same deal here, we're not trying to go super fast, just get moving. When we're rowing in this warm-up and also during this workout, let's make sure we're keeping this chest up nice and tall, so what'll happen as you start to get tired, especially in that workout, is you'll start leaning this chest forward, everything will start getting a little bit sloppy, and then your pace is going to start slowing down, your efficiency starts to decrease. So we want to make sure we're keeping this chest up nice and tall, driving through these heels, nice long pull to that sternum every time. Finish this 200 up and head right back to these dumbbells. So now we'll do our dumbbell snatch. We'll go 10 alternating sides here. Just make sure we're keeping that chest up tall. We don't want to hinge too hard at the hips. Start getting that back a little bit more than you want to. Finish off this first round with 200 meters on that bike. So as we're doing this warm-up, if you have the bike available to you, we want to be making sure we got it set up the best way possible. So when you're looking at the height of the bike, you want that seat to be set so that when you're at the bottom of your leg extension, your knee will lock out all the way, just like she has here. If this seat is too low, you're going to end that rotation with your knee still a little bit bent, and you're never going to get the most drive out of that hamstring and quad. So you want to make sure you have that pedal set to the right height. All right, and that's 1 round of that warm-up down. Let's go ahead and run through that one more time, starting back with those deadlifts. So once again, still focusing on that back stand flat. 5 and 5. So remember, if we're feeling pretty good right now, you can start picking up the pace on some of these movements, when you start getting that heart rate up, it's not a bad idea to start breathing a little bit heavier as we finish up this warm-up. But now she is picking up the pace on this run, just enough to start getting that blood really flowing. All right, we'll head back another set of the hang power cleans. Get that row one more time. While she's finishing up this row, let's talk about how you set up this fan and set up the damper and the foot pedal. So you want to make sure that when we're setting up the pedal here, you're in a position where you can keep this heel mostly flat to the straps so that you can always drive through that heel. When we're looking at the fan, because we're rowing for distance today, you're going to want this to be a little bit lower than normal. If we're rowing for calories, it might be a little bit higher, but that even might be a little bit high for her right now, so we'll drop that down to about a 5. It's going to be nice, smooth pulls. So now if we're looking at the monitor here, we're looking at the strokes per minute. You want to keep this under 30. As soon as you start getting above 30, you're going to start blowing that heart rate up way too high. You got a whole lot of work to get done today, so we want to focus on keeping this number low. Right around 27 would be perfect. And we'll get one last set of these snatches and one more ride on the bike. Focus on keeping that dumbbell close to the body on the way back down, landing right in between the legs. And on this last bike, why don't you go ahead and just sprint. Go as fast as you can. I want you to be breathing pretty heavy going into this. Finishing up this warm-up. So that'll finish up the warm-up. Should be breathing pretty heavy right now. So once we finish up that warm-up, give yourself about 5 to 10 minutes, just enough time for you to bring that heart rate down and kind of feel not quite cooled off, but ready to go. And then try to start that workout within 5 to 10 minutes of finishing up that warm-up. While we're letting her cool down, let's go over our workout here. So we're gonna go 2 rounds for time. Very much like the warm-up here. Cap is going to be 16 minutes. That's a hard cap. So at 16, whether you're done or not, let's call it good. You're going to start with that 400-meter run. Then we'll go 10 dumbbell deadlifts. So for these, you're going to use both dumbbells. So you have one on either side. Chest is going to stay up nice and tall and back is nice and flat. Just coming down until you can tap one end of the dumbbell to the floor and then stand up to that full lockout. We'll then head to a 400 or 300 meter row. If you're at home with no rower and no bike, we'll just keep these both a run, 400 meter run again. We'll go back for these 10 dumbbell power cleans. So these are also coming from the floor. We're also going to use both dumbbells. So you can go from between the legs, like I prefer, or you can go outside the legs, very similar to that deadlift. Whichever one you like is going to work just fine.
They're hang cleans.
We'll go 1,200 meter bike. Same thing. If we're at home, we'll run. And then 10 double dumbbell snatches. So this one is probably going to be a little bit of a newer movement. This is going to be the most challenging one. So your dumbbells are starting between the legs, locking out both overhead. So for that dumbbell snatch, that's going to be definitely the most challenging movement in this workout. I would recommend splitting those up into like 5 and 5 right from the get-go. You got 2 decent sized sets of them, so we want to make sure we approach that well. Go in 10 seconds. Alright, so we're getting started with this first run. Nothing too crazy right now. The pace shouldn't be too fast. We're just making sure that we're moving at a decent pace. We want to get to those dumbbells with something left in the tank to try to get through those first 10 deadlifts pretty quickly. That movement shouldn't beat you up too bad, so you should be able to get through those unbroken, hopefully. So we're just focusing on that breathing. Nice deep breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth. Just make sure we're relaxing those shoulders. Coming up on about halfway into this first run. Just make sure we're finishing at about the same pace you started at. If you're starting to drop off on that pace, you probably came out a little bit fast. We're going to want to adjust that as we're going, finishing up the end of this here. Our last 30 seconds or so. So as you're coming back from that run, plan to be going right to those dumbbells and picking those up to start that work right away. So if you tail off the pace a little bit in the last 20 meters or so, that may not be a bad idea. The goal is going to be getting in there, getting that weight up and moving, and then getting right back out on that next run or on that row. Finishing up here in a couple seconds. So now we're going to head straight to these dumbbells. We're getting our 10 dumbbell deadlifts. Remember, we got one in each hand. We're making sure this chest is staying tall and this back is staying flat. So you'll notice these feet are going to be a little bit closer together just because of the way those dumbbells are going to move. That's fine. Just make sure you're getting a little bend in that knee so you can get as much help from that hamstring as possible. All right, 10 done, nice and easy. So we'll head right over to the row. We got 300 meters. Now let's remember what we talked about in that warm-up. Keeping that technique nice and solid is going to be one of the keys to getting through this workout without that back getting too blown up, without that heart rate getting too high to the point where technique starts getting sloppy. So this back is going to stay flat, chest is going to stay nice and tall, and we're focusing on these nice long pulls to this sternum every time. So even if you want to take a second at the back of that pull, just to let that fan spin a little bit, you're still getting some distance before you return for that next pull. Keeping this stroke per minute right around 26, so she's got a perfect pace right now. This back is starting to round a little bit, so let's try to flatten that back out, push that chest up. Good. Still on a pretty good pace here. We got 70 meters to go, so not a whole lot of time. And that next movement is going to be those dumbbell cleans, and that pull on the dumbbells is going to be very similar to this pull on the rower. So kind of have that in mind. It'll be the same deal as that run. We want to kind of tail off the pace a little bit in the last couple seconds so that when you walk over to these dumbbells, you can pick that weight up and get that first set done. So hopefully we can still manage a set of 10 here. If not, a 5 and 5 will do just fine. We're really going to want to look for a bend in that knee so you can drive through those heels. The weight's going to be pretty manageable, so you don't want to get too much in the habit of powering through that back as you're pulling off the ground. You want to still try to keep proper mechanics on those dumbbells. So we'll go into this 1,200 meter bike, and we're getting close to the end of this first round here. So you're going to start being a little bit tired at this point. It's not a bad idea to start maybe backing up the pace on this bike going into these snatches. The snatches are going to be very difficult. So we'll spend maybe a minute or so on this bike right at the beginning, just trying to get that heart rate under control. Maybe try to get that breathing a little bit slowed down. Once you've got your minute or so in and you're feeling okay, you can pick up that pace a little bit, and then as you approach the end, it'll be the same as the first two. We're going to tail off that pace a little bit, going into these dumbbell snatches, and on these snatches, the plan is probably going to be sets of 5. That pulling power is going to start getting a little bit tired, especially going into that second round. So plan for that. As we're pedaling on this bike, let's make sure these knees are staying in line with the pedals. You don't want them shifting inside or outside too much. They're going to stay straight up and down, right over the ankle, right over the toe, right over the pedal, so that drive down can be as powerful as possible. All right, we'll come on over for our dumbbell snatches. A couple big deep breaths. Let's stand up tall, get some air. These are going to be tough. Let's plan to break these up. Good. Take a good second or two. Big deep breaths. Shake out those arms a little bit. Maybe stretch out those forearms. That grip is going to start getting a little wore out. All right, we'll get 5 more to finish up this first round.
4.
4 more. All right. All right, that's 1 round done. We'll head right back to this runner. We're going to get this second run going. So now going into the second run, you're not going to feel nearly as good as you would on that first one. That pace is going to slow down a little bit, and that's okay. You just got to keep moving. If we can, try to run that whole thing. If you got to slow down to a walk for a little bit, we can do that if we have to, but we want to try to just keep this pace up the whole time. So we're doing really well on time right now. Definitely on pace to finish this in the cap. Want to make sure we're staying breathing. It'll be a lot easier to stop thinking about that once we start getting tired. Come on back to these deadlifts. So hopefully on this second set of deadlifts, we're still looking at about 10 unbroken if we can. If you got to break them up real quick into 5 and 5, that's also going to be okay. We want to try to get on and get off nice and quick and keep moving. Deep breath, nice flat back. We'll get these 10 reps going. Let's keep that back nice and flat. Keep that chest up tall, keep those shoulders active. We're on this second row. Try to get this row going. Still focused on those nice long pulls. There's not really going to be a point in this workout where you're really sprinting to try to finish faster. It's all going to be about consistent pace, solid movement, just continuing to keep getting work done. We want to make sure we're maintaining that nice flat back and that chest is staying nice and tall during these rows. When we're pulling, you don't want to be pulling through the elbow and through the tricep. Pull through this upper back. So when you pull back, pull these shoulder blades back and get a nice big pull through that back to get as much power out of that pull as you can. So make sure we're leaning back a little bit more. Pull to that sternum. Want to get every last bit of this. And if going into this second row, you feel like your damper was set maybe a little too high or a little too low, you can definitely take a second to adjust that coming into the second row. All right, so we got our dumbbell cleans. Let's make sure we're standing up, get some breath in the lungs. So now it's probably a good idea to split these up also into a 6-4 or a 5-5, somewhere around there, just so we can start getting some work done. Good, a couple deep breaths, stretch out those forearms quick. We still have those snatches ahead of us. Want to make sure we're ready for those. Finish up these 10 and then we'll hop on that bike for our last bike ride. So we're getting on our bike for the last time here. Remember, we'll spend about a minute, maybe 30 seconds to a minute, just catching our breath. Pace might be a little bit slower. Once you've got your wits about you, you can start picking that pace up a little bit until we get closer to the end of that interval. We want to make sure we're going to continue pushing with these legs and pushing and pulling with the arms. So if you do one or the other, your pace is going to start dropping off. If you make sure you keep your hands on those handles and you push and pull with both arms, you'll be able to keep a better pace for longer. So you got your whole body kind of working and helping you out through it. We're now getting into the end of this workout here. We only got a couple more reps to go when we hop off this bike. You're going to be really tired. If you got to split up these last 10 into even more than just a 5 and 5, like a 4-3-3, something like that, it's not a bad idea. We just want to make sure we finish strong with good technique, good form. So we'll get on over here for these last couple snatches. Let's go a couple deep breaths, and then we want to get this first set going. So even if we're doing some smaller sets, that's okay. Good. So notice how she's got kind of a kettlebell swing type movement going. That's going to be a great plan for getting through these a little bit easier versus just trying to pull off the ground with your arms. You're going to set these kettlebells back kind of more in line with the heels and swing and drive up through those heels to get through those hips to get that weight locked out overhead as easily as possible. So we'll finish up these last couple reps here. Keeping that flat back using that kettlebell swing technique. And that'll be that.